Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to St. Sarkis Church. It's good to see you all. Have you ever asked yourself, what am I doing here? And by the way, this is not a question about coming to St. Sarkis. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the purpose of my life? What am I doing here? Am I just a consumer who lives in this world, takes advantage of the things that our society and our culture offers, and then one day, when the time comes for us, we just depart from this world? Or there is something more into our existence? Is there a purpose for me in my life? Did God give me a purpose in my life? Am I having a hard time finding the meaning and the real purpose of my life? If you haven't asked yourself these questions, maybe you should. Maybe you should. Because we learn from our faith that we are not consumers. That each and everyone who is here in this world, God has given them a purpose. And if you do not believe me, start reading the Bible. There's a very famous story in the Bible. Story that when we tell our children, they get excited and then they ask a ton of questions. That story is the story of Jacob and his 12 sons. The story of Joseph. Joseph, who seemed to be a nice guy, but his brothers did not like him. They hated him so much that when the time came, they sold him as a slave to the Egyptians. And they told their old father that beasts ate him. He died. And poor Joseph, as a slave, he went to Egypt. And then he found his way, and suddenly we know now he is part of the royal family. He is a prince. And then he rescues his 11 brothers. When we put the whole story into perspective, we come to see that, there was a purpose for everything that happened. This week is a very important week in the life of our church. On Monday and Tuesday, we will be celebrating the feasts of Saint Hrypsime and Saint Gayane. Sometimes when we read the story of our church, the Armenian church, and we contemplate on the life of our saints, we almost always think about these guys over there. Saint Gregory, King Dertat, that painting over there, right? And we forget Saint Hrypsime and Saint Gayane. For those who do not know, Saint Gayane was the leader of a society, of a community of nuns who were persecuted in Rome. And they thought that going east towards Armenia, they might find safe haven for their community. And they did run away from Rome, and they came to Armenia. And there was a different fate waiting for them. Our king Dertat fell in love with Hrypsime and tried to get married to her. And Hrypsime refused because she was a committed member of their community. What happened is gruesome because the king ordered the torture of the nuns who were eventually killed for their faith. They ran away from the persecutions that were taking place in Rome. They could have just stayed there and died there, right? But for some reason, they came to Armenia, and they were martyred there in Armenia. But when we continue reading our history, we come to see that our king was deeply, deeply disturbed by witnessing the torture that he himself ordered, by witnessing the execution of the innocent ladies. And subsequently he fell ill. And it was his sister who had the vision that only St. Gregory could save him. Subsequently, St. Gregory was released from the pit, and he cured the king. And I hope that you know the rest of the story, that how Armenia became a Christian nation, the first Christian nation. This is a very powerful statement that tells us that events are not random events, that there is a purpose in our lives. Sometimes we fail to see the purpose and the meaning of our life. Examine your lives. Some of us are immigrants to this country. Some of us were born in this country. Look back and examine your lives. The things that happened to you. Probably there were so many things that at that time you did not know why it was happening. But when you put things into perspective, you can clearly see why it happened. What was the purpose of it? I was reading and reflecting on the life of a very well-known priest. This priest was a seminarian, and it was right before his ordination that he heard that his father was ill. He went to visit his father, and doctors told him that this is it. There's no hope. Your father will not gonna make it. He came back to his seminary, and he had a conversation with one of his professors. He told, I don't know what to do. I am the only son in the family. I have my mother, and I know that my dad is dying. I'm not even sure what to do with my life. I'm not even sure if I should be a priest or just go and try to live my life as a layperson, trying to take care of my mother. And this is a very difficult question. I was a seminarian. I know how it feels when that time comes for you to make those life-changing decisions. And this professor, after listening to the whole story, asked one question to the novice. She asked, Can you trust your future to God? And there is no easy answer to this question. 20 years later, this priest writes about his life, and he says, I did trust my future, and I surrendered my future to God. This story touched me very deeply. Because in life, when we live our day-to-day life, we think that everything is fine. We think that we are in control of everything. But when sufferings come, when problems come to our lives, we think that we have lost any sense of control. And it's very ironic that it is during those times when we put our guards down, we can see the presence of God. We can see God clearly, stretching his hand and trying to rescue us. There is a verse that I like from St. Paul, who, reflecting on his troubles that he experienced in Asia Minor, he writes, we went through a lot. We thought that we had received the sentence of death. We thought that we were dying. But then he pauses and he says, but that made us rely not on ourselves, but rely on God. You would think somebody as St. Paul, who had the vision from God, who was commissioned by Jesus to go and preach to Christianity, it took him a while to begin to rely on God. If it was difficult for St. Paul, it is certainly difficult for us. But the path is there, my friends. If we rely on God, even in the midst of our problems, God will give answers to our deepest questions. God will show the way, and God will give the purpose of our lives. As we celebrate the feasts of Saint Gayane and Saint Ripsime, let us reflect on our own lives. Let us try to find the purpose of our lives. May God bless you all now and always and forever. Amen.